Hi, welcome and thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations here at the Advent Christian Village. I am happy to introduce you to our guest today in this conversation, and it's Terry Fall. Terry, welcome and thank you so much for taking part today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a joy. It's an exciting journey.
And you said this is a new adventure for you, and new adventures are always fun, I think.
I think so too, except when they're bad.
Well, that's true.
But this one is not.
Good. I want the visitors to get to know you like I've gotten to know you over the last few weeks. And you live in Taylor Commons, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And when did you move to the village?
Moved to the village July 1st, 2020. So it's about 9 months almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with where did you grow up? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Oh my goodness. I was born in Hoboken, New Jersey. But I only lived there till I was 4 months old. And then my father and mother and one sister moved to Hicksville, Long Island. And it was a small community, just a couple of row houses, Cape Cod type. And we had potato farms in back of us. And we were there, well, there ended up being like 5 of us, 5 children, in this little Cape Cod house with 2 bedrooms.
Oh, goodness.
And then we moved to New Jersey, New Milford, New Jersey. It's in Bergen County, in an area closer to the New York City area, metropolitan area. And lived there from the age of 12 to maybe about 20. And was an interesting life there. So,
do you have special memories of those years?
Not really that are very good. I know that up until I was 20, there are a word called dysfunctional families, and I'm certainly a product of dysfunctional families. And I also want to say that many people grow up in a dysfunctional family and don't talk about it very much, but it's the truth. You never know what goes on in the house next door to you. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. My father abused me, my mother disliked me. So I guess I can say I don't have any particular happy memories of growing up when I was young. It was probably until I was age of 20 that started to make a difference, and that's when I left home. I also rebelled at that point, and I think that's a natural stage for many young people, to find their way. You have to find your way. You got to figure it out for yourself. But at that time, I had worked at the Lipton Tea Company. That's the one that does Lipton tea, iced tea mix, wishbone salad dressings, Breyer ice cream, popsicle, a whole bunch of companies that they owned. But I would say I could separate my social life from my business life. So just let me talk briefly about my social life. And it was very eclectic. In that I rode with the motorcycle. I got my license when I was 14, and I rode with a bunch of people doing all kinds of things. I traveled a lot. In the wintertime, there was sharing a ski house in Hunter Mountain, New York, and we skied Vermont, Massachusetts, Canada, Colorado, all over the place, and New York and New Jersey. In the summertime, it was sharing a house during the Jersey Shore, and we were there. We did a lot of surfing and swimming, and then also in the Hamptons, North Hamptons in Long Island. I also did a lot of things I'm not very proud of, but all in all, that was a happy time for me. At least I thought it was. Oh, and Woodstock. I did do Woodstock. So when you think about what you do during your learning stage, if you will, again, there's some things that I did well and other things that I'm not terribly proud of, but it's all part of who I am right now. So having said that, I'll go on to the work area, because when I had started working, I did go to school, college, and went to school at night. My parents refused to pay for any education, and but I was also pretty much on the fast track as a workforce. I started out as a secretary, and after about 25 years, I ended up as the manager of the export sales division, which was an $8 million profit center. I did ad hoc cooperation in terms of acquisitions for other companies. I was very good at figuring things out, very good at that. And I taught a lot of coworkers. We had classes so that I could teach them how to use the computer, all of the Microsoft software programs. I had production, sales, my goodness. And again, I traveled a lot with the company.
Was that nationally and internationally, or?
It was more nationally than internationally. Export sales was more for Russia and Germany and, say, the Eastern countries, but also a lot for the Pacific Rim. We did a lot of business with the Pacific Rim. So there was really no need for me during that term to do that. And so I didn't. And that's pretty much, and I kept my business life separate from my social life. So that really was a big help for me because I did not get involved with people at work, except for the fact that I met my husband at work.
Tell us about that.
That was, if you remember the Godfather movie, and they talked about the thunderbolt, I just happened to be walking down the hall one day and I looked into a closet that was not supposed to be open, and there was this man, blonde, blue eyes, biggest smile I'd ever seen, and that just, that's all she wrote. And probably from March to August, we were married. What tricked me, and he did trick me, in that one day he saw me in the hall and he said, "My name is Ron. I'm divorced. I have a 9-year-old son. I'm 37 years old, and I would really like to get to know you." Now, how could you not fall in love with something like that?
Right.
One of the first men who ever really wanted to know me for me. I mean, he knew what position I held. And that was something in the company. You do not fraternize with the workforce if you were an outside contractor. But they weren't going to stop me.
I had the feeling a lot of things haven't stopped you. Not much has stopped you.
Probably not. Very stubborn. So, but I will say that all this time I thought I was happy. And truthfully, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know God. I mean, I knew there was a higher power, but I did not know God. And early in our marriage, my husband had a mini stroke. And that didn't stop us, but after several tests, the doctor said, "You've got between 5 and 7 years to live."
Wow.
Well, you can imagine that when you do that, you never, ever take anything for granted. Every day you live, it escalates all of who you are and all of what you want out of your companion, your partner, to a much higher level with a deep appreciation for who they are. It's not about me, it's about us. So that is one of the lessons that I learned. And it came to be that when the company was going to be doing downsizing, large companies back in the late 80s, early 90s were downsizing. It was economic change. So and several levels of management that were really not necessary. They would go outsourcing and then insourcing and then outsourcing and insourcing. And so at one point, I just said, my husband could not tolerate really the cold at his age, and he's a fragile diabetic at the same time. So we decided, okay, he wanted to go where it was warmer, and he's my life. I mean, I can get a job pumping gasoline and I'd be okay, but for him, so I said, I want to take part in this downsizing. And they said, "But you're not slated for that." And I said, "So what is my parachute?" And that's when they told me, and I talked to my husband, and he went and found this place in Madison, Florida. I never saw it till we bought it, but we moved to Madison, Florida. And the purpose of doing that was to plan for life after death. Mm-hmm. And again, I did not know who God was, but he was my husband, and I loved him, and I'm not a pushover. I mean, I take my life seriously, and I figured it all out. So I was going to raise ostriches, and after he died, I could do that. Mm-hmm. Well, I did, but he didn't die. I mean, that's what happened is that when we finally got there and we started developing this piece of property, which was a 60-acre piece of property that was rolling and had ponds and virgin woods and lots of fields, but it was feral land. Nobody had done anything with it for a long, long time, so we started to develop it. I learned to drive a tractor. I learned to hunt because he could only have red meat, which was deer. And so I did what I needed to do, and we drove fence lines, and we did all things together. And what happened is that one time I came home, and I couldn't find him, which was very scary. And he said, I think I need to get a checkup. So we went and had a catheterization, and the doctor said, Mrs. Fall, he said, I want to tell you, your husband needs to have open heart surgery. And I said, okay, we'll be here in the morning. He said, no. He said, there's people in much better shape than he was that didn't come back the next morning. So he scheduled for surgery at 5:30 in the morning. So I called my son, my son of my heart, mm-hmm. and he was coming down, and Ron had a quadruple bypass, which I just felt so betrayed. I couldn't understand it. I just could not understand how one doctor could say, you've got 5 to 7 years, and this other doctor has given him another 20 years of life. I felt betrayed for the 7 years that we lived in such stress and love, but it was still stress. And without realizing, one thing was that the way medicine was escalating was just going so fast. Mm-hmm. What they couldn't do years and years ago, right, they could do today. Mm-hmm. But that didn't help me deal with it for a little while. But anyway, the bottom line was we started out with 7 ostriches and ended up with about 200 in a matter of 2 years on what they call on the hoof, I guess. And what was interesting about that was that the ostriches, when you, like with, I guess, cattle, the way to stop having baby cattle is you take the bull away. Mm-hmm. Well, the way to stop ostriches is to take the eggs away, and you don't let them hatch. But so we had all of these eggs. What do you do with these eggs? So I started blowing them out, and we had a couple of neighbors who were bakers, and they used the blown out contents of the ostrich eggs in their baking, and their business boomed. It was so good.
Well, I think you brought something that I'd love for us to show the viewers today.
This is an ostrich egg that's about the size, an average size. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger, but an average ostrich egg is the equivalent to maybe a dozen and a half chicken eggs.
Wow.
And yeah. What I ended up doing was painting them, and I gave them as Christmas gifts because I could, and it was something I could do. Now, happily, I'll say, the ostrich business failed. We lost everything. When I say everything, it was like no risk, high risk, no return.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have something left. You have a lovely ostrich egg for Easter.
Oh, yeah, I do. And I have wonderful memories, and I have articles and everything. It's just, it's a joy to have that as a memory of understanding that the ostrich business died, but my husband didn't. And I will say right here and now, that God gave my husband to me so my husband could bring me to Florida, to Madison, so that I could know who God was. And he gave me to my husband so that once I knew who God was, I could show him to my husband.
Wow, what a testimony.
Yeah, I mean, my husband was the best gift I ever gave myself, but then it's the best gift God ever gave me so that I could know who he was, as well as the son of my heart, because I learned more about myself knowing Austin and helping him to grow up than I ever knew before. I could not be the kind of mother that my mother was to me. It did not work. I had to figure it out. And here is this young boy at 9 years old whose mother did not want him, and Austin knew it, and his father wanted him. And yet, here's this woman that he barely knew was going to be his stepmom, and he had to figure that one out too, and we figured it out together. And I will say he's one of the greatest people I have ever known. And it's not me, it's all about him and his life and his choices. And I'm so proud to have been part of him. You know, I remember one time when his mom really gave my husband a hard time about Austin, and Austin found out about it. She put the lawyers and everything, and Austin found out, and he didn't want to talk about it, but when he did, and I just said to him, I said, Austin, I said, your mom loves you the best way she knows how. It may not be good enough for you right now. It's not good enough for me, but it may not be good enough for you, and that's what's important. But it's the best she knows how to do. And all I want to be is really, really important to you, that you would be happy that you have known me. And that kind of like settled things out a lot between us. And that was a good thing. Yeah. So the next part of my life is, how did you know God? Well, if you ever visited the Bougainville Ranch, which is what we called our place, you could know. I mean, you just look around any place, any sunset, any pond, any, black-bellied whistler birds, you know, the deer, everything is there. And it's wonderful. And the goats. See, once we finished with the ostriches, we went to goats and horses. I kept horses for some friends of mine. We called it summer camp. And my job was to keep them with the goats and to socialize these horses. And I loved them. But all the goats, they knew me. And when I called them, they all came. It was just fun. And but that was all part of it, I think. And a friend of mine asked me, she said, Terry, could you please do me a favor? I promised church that I would bring someone to the Disciple Bible study. It's a nighttime, 13 weeks. Just come the first time. If you don't want to come again, you don't need to come again. And I said, okay, I will do that. And I did. And I went through the 13 weeks, and I realized I knew nothing. I knew nothing. It was like a sponge that was left outside in the sun to dry up. And then all of a sudden, gentle rain, because if you stuck it in a bucket of water, it wouldn't do anything but float on the top. But little by little, it got saturated, and it would I'd start to leak. I'm going to be leaking now, probably. But the whole thing is I realized I'm forgiven, I'm loved, I'm never alone. And I could deal with anything. I will figure it out, because he's always with me, which was huge. I mean, I never knew what I didn't know, but I'm learning I still don't know anything. And that's big. But I also have purpose, and that's important. And with the church, I also realized I love to sing. And I sang in the choir and occasional solos. I wrote children's stories for them to know who God was. And that was helpful for me during testifying to the lessons I'm learning. Mm-hmm. The lessons I should have learned a long, long time ago, and didn't. And then when my husband's last year was just very hard, we got rid of all of our livestock, kept the dogs, planted trees because we still needed the ag exemption. But he was on his journey towards the end of his life, and that was probably the hardest part. The last 4 months was truly difficult because he was in and out of the hospitals, and I was there leaving 6:30 in the morning, going to Tallahassee, which is an hour and a half away, and then coming back at 6:30 at night, another hour and a half, just to turn around and do it again. But I could not leave him alone. He had no one to advocate for himself, and I wanted to know that he was okay. He spent 3 weeks in ICU for no reason at all, I think. But, that's just between me and the hospitals, because I thought I knew everything. Anyway, I know I don't know everything, but I know a lot more than I did before.
I bet.
So, but I remember when he passed, the day before he did, I had the chance, and every day, but this I knew he was dying. I knew I wasn't going to see him anymore alive. He was just in a fetal position and quiet in pain, and I just got to tell him how much I loved him, how much of a better person I am for knowing him, for having him in my life, the difference he has made in the community and his friends, and how terribly missed he's going to be. But it was okay for him to go, that I could take care of stuff. I could be all right. And saying goodbye was a gift. I mean, there was no surprise. It was easy. And the next morning, he was pronounced dead. And my son missed him by 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Which was so sad. And all he said to me was, I just wish I had more time. And that, I can honestly say, is something we will probably, every one of us, say about a loved one when they pass. I wish I had more time. And it's true. So
and it's a testimony to your love for others, as well as the knowing that God has another plan and you will be together again.
That is one of the biggest joys, is because knowing that, I don't know how much of God he knew. I knew when I met him, he was an atheist, and then he went to an agnostic, but I knew he knew who God was. And when he died, even at the last second, he could know because God will show him. So I never have any doubt that grace and mercy is for all of us. It's for all, and it's for Ronnie too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but then came my journey, and I got to tell you, I am humbled. I am so humbled. And my journey of being humbled is not over. I know it's not, because I used to say, I got nothing on Job. No, Job's got nothing on me, I mean, all of what I went through with my husband, but the stress after all of that, after the 4 months commuting and taking care of business and all that stuff, I ended up with a virus infection in my eye, and they couldn't resolve it. And for 2 years, I was in exasperating pain. I mean, so much so, and there was nothing, just nothing could be done. And they were tried everything, and short of a cornea transplant, which I was not eligible for, so that didn't work. And I would go to bed at night sometimes, and I would pray, please, Lord, don't let me wake up. Don't let me wake up. And if I must wake up, please send me back to sleep, because I cannot tolerate this. But again, he has a reason for me. And he didn't not let me wake up. And so I lost my left eye. And they had to remove it. There was no other choice. And it was my decision, really, because I sent my doctor an email with a chart on it with all of the options. And does the pain go away? Will the virus not come back? And all the answers were no. Well, if you take the eye, will the pain go away? Yes. Will the virus come back? No, because there's no eye for it to come back to. So I lost the eye in 2018, and that was okay. I was so glad. You know, there was no pain after that at all. And then little by little, my right eye started to disintegrate. And we're still trying to figure it out. I've come to the point where the best vision I have right now is 20/400, which means that what you can see at 400 feet, I need to get to be 20 feet. And that's not nearsighted vision. That's my far-sighted vision. Mm-hmm. At worst, it's 20/900, which is like a great big old fog. Everything is white. My vision is not black, it's white. I can see on a good day contrast of colors, but I cannot see anybody's face. Here's the gift. I can't see your face, but I can hear your heart. There's, you know, they say you can't know a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. You have to get into the book. Sometimes you've got to get into several chapters until you know what it's all about. And that's the way it is with my vision. You know, I don't, and I can't see your face, but I've listened to you, I've talked with you, I know who you are. You know, if I can learn your voice, that's even better. But for everybody, you know, if we could only understand that vision is not only here, mm-hmm. in the eye, it's in here, and it's in who you're talking to or what you're seeing. You know, and I can live with that, and I'll figure it out. That's one of my mantras.
Well, that is one of the things, getting to know you, that I admire you so much for, is the way you figured out things throughout your life.
Wow.
And I guess we're going to have to call this to a halt for now.
Okay.
But let's do it again sometime.
Thank you.
There's lots more stories.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we hope you'll join us in another episode of Front Porch Conversations.